Hi there, this is Jennifer and welcome to another video. Today I was going to try my first made in minutes video where I do a video under 10 minutes and I failed. That's okay. I'm going to share it anyways. It ended up being 15 minutes, which is close, but I'll keep trying. I am sharing, however, my favorite technique from years ago when I used to travel teaching. And it is so much fun, and it is an effortless watercolor with lots of shimmer. You can do it with inks that you likely have and many stamps that you have. And I'll tell you, this is so easy, you let the water do the work for you. So let's go ahead and get started. This is Festive Flowers, which is a large 6x8 stamp set designed by Gina Designs for Simon Says Stamp as a collaboration for Stamp-Timber. So you can only get this at Simon Says Stamp and for a limited time. I loved that large floral image and thought it would be perfect for today's technique. So I'm going to start a timer and I'll stop and start it as I work today. I have the large image here that I've put into my MISTI stamping tool. I'm just used to using that, but you could definitely use an acrylic block. I'm putting my anti-static powder tool across a piece of watercolor paper. I'm using Tim Holtz watercolor paper because it's bright white. And now I'm inking up that large flower image with VersaMark ink. And then I'll add Hero Art's white embossing powder and heat set it. You won't be able to see the image unless you tilt it in the light, but that's okay. And I went ahead and I did this on 4 pieces of watercolor paper. Now I'm also going to stamp the large image towards the center of a bigger piece of watercolor paper because this will be the background and I'm not really sure how I want to trim it down. So I'm white heat embossing it in the center and I'm doing this for 2 backgrounds. After I put the powder on all of those pieces, I'll heat set them all at once. That's a great way to save time because your gun will be good and hot and ready to go. The next thing you need to do is to create some pearlized water. Now, pearlized water I make by filling any kind of mist or spray bottle with water, and then I put about a half a teaspoon of perfect pearls in it. That's a pigment powder. Very inexpensive, a little goes a long way. And it makes your water this pearly shine. It's shimmery and just gorgeous. You want to shake it before you use it, but I store my bottle like this for a long time and I've never had any problems. So that's why my bottle is already ready to go. Next, I'm taking those white heat embossed watercolor pieces and just taping them onto a board. This will help me to keep them flat as we do our faux watercolor, and then I can pick it up and move it aside while it dries. For this technique, I'm using Tim Holtz Distress Ink. You could use a variety of dye inks that react with water, but I find that Tim Holtz Distress Inks are the best. Now this is the fun part. We're just going to put ink down on the paper as much as we can, direct to paper, not caring what it looks like. We just want to cover all of the flower with this ink, and I used Abandoned Coral first. Then towards the center, I used Festive Berries, and then right at the center, I put the dark Fired Brick. Okay, so now I'm going to spray this very generously with that pearlized water that we made. Now I had a little goober on the end of my mist bottle. I ended up removing it and it sprayed better later, but it doesn't matter. I just want to put a lot of this pearlized water onto that. It will look like a hot mess, but that's okay. It'll dry nicely. On the one on the left, I'm using greens and making sure to cover the leaves of the image. I'm using mowed lawn and then a little bit of the darker forest moss. Doesn't matter how well you do here, you just want to get that color down. Then, once again, we're going to spray it very generously with that pearlized water. You want so much water on here that it pools up. I find that the more water you put down, the better the blending you'll get, and it just makes it look good in the end and does all the work for you. So you can see we have 2 very messy images here. All I'm going to do is set them aside and let them dry on their own. This is the hardest part, but I promise it's worth it. So let's do another example. This time I'm going to do softer colors. On the right, I have Tumbled Glass, and then I'm going to add a little Peacock Feather and Mermaid Lagoon. This time, instead of spraying with pearlized water, I'm just going to spray with regular water to show you that if you don't want the shiny, shimmery effect of the pearlized water, you can just do this with regular water and get a typical watercolor look. Okay, so I've put that ink down there. You can see it took no time at all. And now this is a regular water bottle and I'm just spraying it generously. You can see how the water puddles up between the embossed areas. Okay, on the left-hand side, I'm going to use Shabby Shutters. I wanted to go lighter this time. And then a little bit of Mowed Lawn. Once I'm done, I'll spray that generously and set both of these aside to dry along with the others. Next, it's time for the backgrounds. I want this to be super soft, just a little glow of blue around our images. So towards the outside of that image, I'm using an ink blending tool this time with tumbled glass ink, so I could make like a cloud of color. Then, once again, I'm going to spray that generously with the pearlized water on one and with water on the other. So I set those aside to dry for some time. Once they were dry, I came back and it's time to cut up our pieces. But here's a trick for you. I wanted dimension behind all of my stamping, so I'm going to go ahead and put craft foam on the back of it before we cut it out. This is white craft foam, and I'm putting double-sided adhesive on the back of it before we do our cutting. I'll remove the release paper from the adhesive and press that to the back of our stamped and watercolored piece. Now I'm using my scissors to cut this out. The craft foam is stuck to the back, so we're cutting the craft foam at the same time that we're cutting out our image. So on the green piece, I'm cutting along the outside edge of the leaves. When I'm done with that, I'll put craft foam on the back of the blue piece and cut that out along the outside edge of the flower. I'm cutting at a slight angle so that the craft foam is cut angled in so you don't see it peeking out from the edge of the stamped flower. So now we have these two pieces with craft foam behind it, and we can glue them together and get great dimension. And now they look nice and clean because we cut off the extra, and we have a beautiful watercolor look that took no time at all. So I'm just putting my phone on that to give it some time to dry. Now the background piece with the soft blue ink, I trimmed that down to 4 by 5 1/4. And now we can glue our flower on top of that. So I'm lining up everything. So this was one image, but we gave it a ton of dimension. The sentiment I used is from the Gina K On My Mind stamp set. I stamped that with black ink on a white cardstock strip and added it right across our flower. I then added pearl effects with dimension using the tonic Seashell Nouveau drops. And I did that to the background little berry images and to the center of our flower. I put all of that onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch Simon Says Stamp Fog note card. I made that from the Fog cardstock. And there you can see the beautiful watercolory look that we get, and then how we layered everything up to give dimension to that large image. Now I didn't use the shimmer on this. Remember, I did not use pearlized water on this one. So it doesn't have the shimmer, but our next example will, because I'm going to go back and use the red and the green. The reason I like this technique is I struggle with watercolor, so this gives me the look of it kind of without the effort. Definitely the most time-consuming part of this is cutting out the flowers, but it really only takes a few minutes. Okay, now it's time for our red and green pieces. So once these dry, you'll see these look like a mess, especially because it's got that shimmer to it. You can see I had put a lot of water on it. It's not completely dry, so I'm just going to dab some of it away. If you have areas with too much shimmer where you can't see much of the color below, just use a baby wipe or wet cloth to wipe away some of the shimmer, or you can leave it all for a lot of shine. I glued those pieces onto craft foam and cut them out just like I did before. From the green, I cut out the leaves. From the red, I cut out the flower in the center. So they have craft foam on the back of them and are ready to go. Now our background piece, it's time to trim this down. So this is the one where I use the ink blending tool to apply the tumbled glass distress ink and then sprayed the pearlized water on top. Now I added my flower in place, lining it up with the image on the background. And then I have this joyful die cut from Simon Says Stamp. I cut the shadow from white cardstock and then the joyful word from Lawn Fawn red glitter paper and added it right on top of the white, and then added that to our background. Below Joyful, I want to stamp Holiday Blessings from the Simon Says Stamp Inside Christmas Greetings stamp set. I just stamped that with black ink, and then added everything to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, and then added a few pearls in the background. Now, unlike our blue flower card, this one has a ton of shimmer to it because we sprayed it with the pearlized water, which I absolutely love. So for me, I can get really quick watercolory results this way. If you don't want to hand cut, you could always use coordinating dies to cut out pieces that you do this way, but I like to cut out right up against the white embossed edge. And by the way, I heat embossed Merry Christmas on the matching envelope, and that's from the same Festive Flowers stamp set. Okay, next I wanted to show you how great this technique is for making fast backgrounds that are just beautiful. For both of my examples, I'm using the new beautiful Simon Says Stamp Flora stamp. Now this I went ahead and white heat embossed on watercolor paper just as I did before. I want a softer background, so instead of going direct to paper with ink pad, I'm using an ink blending tool to just roughly apply tumbled glass ink. Not taking any effort to blend. You can see this is looking pretty bad, but it's okay. We're going to add that water to it and it'll blend it. I also used Mermaid, Lagoon, and a little blueprint sketch. Or no, I'm sorry, Salty Ocean. So there we have our messy background, and now I'm going to spray it generously with the pearlized water. So we'll end up with that shine. You'll see that the pearlized water puddles up on it. That's okay. Set it aside to dry, and when you come back, look at this beautiful result you get. So I actually changed my mind and wanted this background to be more vibrant. Instead of starting over, you can just add more color. I'm going in direct to paper. You can see it's a hot mess. Just putting more distress ink down and then adding more of the pearlized water. You can heat set this if you want, but I do find you get better results if you just let it dry on its own. That allows the color to move more and you don't mess up the heat embossing. Okay, so after I let that sit aside for a while, I came back and I had a background that I trimmed down and put onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. For the center of this, I used the Simon Says Stamp Thinking of You heart die. So I die cut the solid heart from white cardstock. Then I die cut the Thinking of You heart 3 times from white cardstock and glued those on top of each other for dimension. Notice how the top layer of the Thinking of You is like a light shimmery blue that perfectly matches the envelope. That's because I used one of those metallic envelopes from Simon Says Stamp. That's that light blue envelope. And I die cut from that and glued that on the top. So now my Thinking of You matches the envelope perfectly. And I'll show you that in action in this next card. Okay, so here's another background, again using the Simon Says Stamp Floral. White heat embossed it on watercolor paper. Applied some Shabby Shutters Distress Ink and also some Mowed Lawn Distress Ink and a little bit of peacock feathers here and there. I sprayed that very generously with the pearlized water. I prefer the pearlized water over the regular water. Set that aside to dry, and when I come back, I have this beautiful soft background. I finished off the card with some simple die cutting. I wanted the top layer of the flowers to be that soft shimmery blue that matches the envelope. So this is one of the Simon Says Stamp metallic envelopes. The shimmer on it matches the background of our card very nicely. I die cut a flower from an envelope, and I'll save the scraps for another card. Then I glue that die cut flower on the top of this stacked die cut. So that's 3 white die cuts stacked together with the blue one on top. I then created a stitch rectangle from the Simon Says Stamp Stitched Banners die set. And then I silver heat embossed a happy hello on the bottom of that die cut. On the back of the die cut, I'm putting some Lawn Fawn double-sided tape. And then I will add a piece of white craft foam and trim off the excess. This will give nice, even raised dimension to this rectangle panel, but you could use craft foam tape if you prefer instead. Okay, so now I'm going to glue that right onto our background. That background is the one that we created, added onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. I'm just kind of putting my die cut there to make sure I like the positioning. Putting some liquid adhesive on the back of our stacked die cut and adding that right on top. Now I was aiming to do all this in under an hour, and look at that, so close. I promise I'll do a made in minutes video soon. But I got carried away with this technique and ended up making my video a little bit longer, but not too long. Okay, so here's the final card. You can see how the top of our die cut matches our metallic envelope perfectly. Then you have this shimmer in the background thanks to the pearlized water technique. I also have the faux stitching thanks to the Simon Says Stamp Stitch Banner die cuts. And then the silver heat embossed a happy hello. By the way, that is from this Gina K A Happy Hello stamp set. I like the small size of that greeting because it fits into tight little places. Okay, there you have an almost made in minutes video. I promise I'll work on that. Anyways, this is a great effortless watercolor technique. I hope you'll give it a try. I will link the supplies that I use in my description below and on my blog. In the middle are a couple other videos you might like, including another video showing this technique that I did about 5 years ago. Thanks for the time you spent with me today. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful week.